work for you. The next individual that's coming to the stage. So, interestingly enough, we met in the Navy several years ago. But I recall a time when I was in the Navy, stationed out in San Diego, California. And I had a Chevy S10 pickup truck. And I'm riding through the city of San Diego, I'm rolling hard, and all of a sudden I look up in my rearview mirror and I see the local sheriff pulling me over. And when he pulled me over, Ms. Rocky, he said, I got some good news and I got some bad news. He said, the good news is, I'm not gonna give you a ticket for your plates being expired. Oops. But the bad news is, GMAC has been looking for this truck. So, sir, you gotta get everything that you own out this truck, because they're coming to get the truck. So I stood on the corner of University and Texas Avenue in San Diego, California, with everything I owned standing there saying, what the football? Back then, I didn't say what the football. You can imagine the adjective I used then. But see, again, what I didn't know.
Can they do that?
I did not know that was going to be part of my story in this entrepreneurial journey. I didn't know that. I also didn't know that when my dad was in this thing called laid off. You guys familiar with the term laid off? Anybody got some family members that's been laid off, or have you been laid off? Yep. So my dad was laid off. And as a kid, we didn't realize what was going on. But what we did realize is every week my dad would go to the wholesale store. And when he'd go to the wholesale store, he'd buy bags, potato chips, pickles, now laters, the little Chico sticks, and he would bring them home and he would put them in the master bedroom, and he would raise the window. And all of the little kids in the neighborhood, including myself and my sister, we would begin buying candy from him. Because he was in this situation called laid off. And then I didn't realize it until I was standing on the stage in San Diego at an entrepreneurship conference. And they asked me, how did you become an entrepreneur? And I was like, whoa, I remember 7, 8 years old. Now, I also remember sneaking the candy and sneaking the potato chips. And my dad would be like, where did that stuff go? And me and my sister sitting there looking like this. But you never know where that seed got planted and how it got planted and where you end up at in this seed. My friend Mike, that's coming to the stage, Mike showed up in my office one day at the base. I did 28 years in the Navy. And one day I'm sitting in my office and this guy busts open, boom. And he tells everybody, you out, you out, you out, you out. I'm like, what's this cat? And basically what he was doing at that time is the same thing he do today. He was taking care of his people. I was a command career counselor. He wanted to make sure that the people that I was counseling or the people that was in his unit were being taken care of. And right now today, Mike has a successful company that is taking care of America. When you talk about TikTok and you talk about all these different services and organizations with security, Mike is your cybersecurity guy coming to the stage for an interview and a fireside chat. My friend, Mike Anderson. Let's give it up for him. What's happening, bro? All right, Mike. You in the hot seat, buddy. So like I said, Entrepreneur Speaks 2025. We're going to do some things different. We can do a little fireside chat. We do I got some questions for you, brother.
Well,
please have a seat.
Let's talk.
All right, let's talk.
Yeah.
I get to talk to Mike.
Like a podcast.
So let me start before we even begin.
Yes, sir.
People talking about their natural abilities and how they bring it to entrepreneurship. I have only one natural ability, and that's being a pain in the butt. So, as you saw in that one story that you illustrated, I was me going into that room on behalf of a sailor of mine who wasn't even that good a sailor, wasn't even that great a guy, but he was my guy and he needed to retire, and so I was going to let him retire. Yeah. And you, at the time, were the man who was keeping me from retiring him.
Yeah.
So I told everybody, get the out. You, me, we're having a conversation.
That's pretty much how it went. I mean, imagine he just came in the office. I'm thinking, never seen him before, but yet He came in the office. He got his brass. I'm thinking, what's this guy telling everybody to get out of my office? But again, that's what he does, and we're excited.
And you know what happened? We figured it out
We
together.
figured it out.
And we've been friends ever since.
After a year and a half of that guy trying to get out, and it took one conversation and a couple running up and down the flight of stairs.
Did a lot of that.
Because we had to figure out what was going on. But for almost 2 years, that guy had been trying to retire and wasn't able to do it. And Mike and I developed a relationship since then and have been, we smoke a cigar together every now and then, but we have built a relationship. And Mike, I'm honored to be able to have this conversation with you,
It's
brother.
my pleasure.
First and foremost, tell them, just give them a summary of your business and a quick background about yourself.
So quick background about myself first, that'll make everything make much more sense. So I have 21 years in the United States Navy, 20 of them as a naval intelligence officer. Got my undergraduate at the University of Texas, so it's not bulls but horns.
Okay.
Master's at King's College, University of London, doctorate at University of Florida in business administration. What brought me to entrepreneurship was, like many people, I was in a moment where I was leaving a large multinational consulting firm, Capgemini. I was like, okay, I'm done. They're done with me, I'm done with them. It's a mutually agreed being done. We're all being done. I can get to the point where I can be too much of a pain in the ass for my own good, and they felt it and I felt it. So that was right at the beginning of COVID. So I was going to take another job with another big consulting company, Gartner, and right at that moment, they were like, there's this weird funk coming from the east. We're gonna hold off on hiring anybody for a while. But I had already told Capgemini, yeah, I'm good, and they had already told me that they were good. And so it became accidental entrepreneurship. I decided, I called my old man, I said, hey, don't you have some long dormant company that you haven't done anything with 20 years? He said, yep. And I said, I'll buy it from you for $1,000. And he said, you can have it. So for $1,000, I bought 900 shares of a company for which only had 1,000 shares. He kept 9% of the company. My sister kept 1% of the company, and I was CEO of a brand spanking new company that was actually a really old company.
So it's funny that you should ask that question. I mean, that you led into that, because that was actually going to be one of my questions. And you basically answered it. He hadn't seen my questions, but you literally walked right down. I was going to ask you, what inspired you to revitalize your father's IT consultancy and pursuing another corporate role? But you just answered it.
So what's funny about it is there was no inspiration whatsoever. Thank you very much. I mean, it was need. It was need to feed, wife, kid, need. And you know what? Sometimes we think of this in the wrong way. We think that we're going to have inspiration, which will lead us to the company, and sometimes we have the company, which leads us to inspiration. And you have to kind of be willing to be flexible on that a little bit, because sometimes you are in a need to feed. Like, you have responsibilities, you have to generate income, ain't nobody paying you at the moment. But once you have it in front of you that you have a company, it kind of gets things moving.
So you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm always talking about that, and as entrepreneurs, that's a difficult thing to see past when you're in this beginning phases and everything like that. Talk about those obstacles, those tough obstacles, because I know you guys don't know, but I remember when you had your baby.
Yeah.
Talk about those tough obstacles that you had to overcome. Newborn, new business.
Ooh, those are grim times.
In the things of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Grim times. Okay, so let's start off with my little one was born 6 weeks early. And I don't mean that. I mean, she was evicted. Like they kicked her out of my wife's body. They were like, "You're done. You're hatching this kid right now." In the middle of COVID, right? So I could be in that ICU with her like 2 hours a day. Then I had to get out. No one else could be there. And my mother-in-law couldn't come. It was just me. the hospital was set up in a way where my wife was on one side of the street and the baby was on the other side of the street, right? So St. Joe's, right? And at the time, there was no way to cross back and forth between the two. So they had to actually put her in an ambulance every time they moved her back. It was crazy.
Wow.
It's a wild story. But this, at the same time that I'm finishing my doctorate, which is no fun, for all those people who want to do a doctorate, don't. It is one of the most isolating events you'll have in your entire life. It's absolutely miserable. Don't recommend it for anybody. But if you absolutely must, University of Florida.
That was a public service announcement.
Public service announcement to all those people who are
ahead.
thinking of becoming doctors. Grim business that.
But
At the same time that I'm starting this company,
Yeah.
I just bought this company
Right.
from my old man. It is generating officially no revenue. It doesn't even know what its actual existence is there to do. Like, I haven't decided on what this company is there to do. But one thing I did do while I was in the service was exercise plan. I was an exercise planner in the Navy. I was an intelligence officer in the Navy. I knew something about those things. And I also knew that people were interested in this thing called cybersecurity, which was the last thing that I did as a consultant before I jumped ship. I said, okay, well, let's see. Let's see if this has any traction. Let's put this flag up and see if anybody will bite. And it bit. A little contract. It was so much of nothing. I mean, that first contract was so meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But what it did was it built a relationship with a client that would continue to see the high quality of my work, and he would continue to feed me work. And it built experiences, one after another, that you can build. So it's those little tiny, it's like entrepreneurship in a way is something like a piece of sand inside the oyster, right? It's nothing until it becomes a pearl. Well, that was the piece of sand. That was, to the religious folks in the room, the proverbial mustard seed. It was the little tiny thing from which a much bigger thing came about. Don't expect immediate success to come, and expect the first success to feel like a whole lot of not much. But if you build on it, and you build on it, and you build on it, it does turn into something great later on.
So, networking and partnership.
Yep.
You and I have been in different networking events and stuff like that, and I remember at one time you introduced me to your partner or partner.
Yep.
Talk to us about the importance of that and why those things are important. And it's not so much as the partnership from the legality aspect of it. It can be a strategic partner in some capacity that can help you do. Talk to us about that and how that has helped.
So much gets done over a beer.
Yeah.
So much gets done over a beer. I mean, I can't emphasize the absolute need to go out there.
We need to write that book, because this is another book that says never eat alone, but we need to write that one.
Yeah, so much gets done
So
over a
much
beer.
gets done over beer.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable when you're, I don't know, maybe there's something vulnerable about like consuming in front of each other that brings people to like, okay, now let's get real here for a second. Like, you're having a beer, I'm having a beer, get real with me. What is actually going on here? And yeah, it happens. Like, there is something that happens on those one-on-one events, one-on-one opportunities. People want to short circuit that stuff by going to, online networking events or big conventions or whatever. But you can get lost in the sauce in some of those things. Like, they can feel like, okay, I just spent $500 attending this big conference. I passed out a bajillion cards. What came of that? Well, not nearly as much as if I could just have a couple of beers with a group of 5, and we could all just kind of sit around and just be real for a second, and like, hey, maybe what I do right now isn't the solution to the problem you have, but let me call up another guy so we can buy him a beer, and I know that guy knows the solution you've got. Now you've become a partnership of 3, and that is a partnership of 3 that is 80% real partnership is better than a partnership of 1,000 where you're only like 1. Like, getting to know people on that level, in my view, as a small business, is the secret to success. Now, when you're getting to be much bigger, the rules all change. What got you here isn't what's going to get you there. I can't speak to that yet because I'm not there yet. Talk to me in 10 years.
Relationships are very important in the entrepreneurial space. I want to take you down history lane real quick.
Sure, shoot.
Because you talked about your dad. You talked about how you bought the business from your dad. Tell us about Little Mike when Mike was Little Mike. When Mike was coming up. Tell us something that none of us know about Little Mike.
Let me give everybody some hope. Little Mike was profoundly average. Profoundly average. Only good at one thing, being a pain. That's it. I mean, I didn't do well in school. I kept saying yes. So anytime somebody would say, okay, well, does anybody want to do this thing or whatever, I kept saying yes, and so I do that sort of thing. But I wasn't particularly good at school. I wasn't particularly bright. I wasn't particularly well spoken. All that changed later for all those people who were like, oh, he seems real bright now. It wasn't true then, right? I did just well enough to get by. But probably the best thing I ever did was be a bass player in a long hair, or in my case, big fro rock and roll band. And being up on stage with nothing more than an instrument is kind of a very vulnerable space where you have to perform or they boo your ass right off stage. So learning to perform under pressure, I tell you, the first job I ever had, sacker at a grocery store. And that seemed like a really crummy job. But I tell you, what's great about being a sacker at a grocery store is it rains outside. And you're not allowed to complain about that. And sometimes clients are crappy, and you're not allowed to complain about it. Sometimes they don't fit. You're not allowed to complain about it. You really have to do your job, and I was 15 at the time, even though it's kind of a crappy situation all around. And what's really funny about it, even though I was a wage slave, minimum wage job, that is the last impression anybody has of a grocery store. Is that kid going out there, loading up stuff in the back of the car. And in fact, if you go to the grocery store, it's probably only one of 2 engagements you have with a grocery store employee.
That's good, man. Because you never think about that. There's a customer service index that says that you don't get a second chance to excel. You don't get a second chance to excel.
Yep.
And you just hit the nail on the head with that. Talk to us about, and as we get close to wrapping it up, what advice would you give to a veteran who is about to get out of the military? Because I, of course, where I was in the military. I'm the guy who believes that service members live their life on the other side of the gate, and I'm the guy that tells them to go beyond the gate. What would you say to that service member that is dreaming and thinking about starting a business, but he's stuck on the other side of the
Okay,
gate?
don't do it. But if you're going to do it, let's talk about what advantages you bring to the actual equation. And I say don't do it because, frankly, it is a hard road to hoe. Yeah. This is going to be for a veteran. It's going to be difficult, and you bring intrinsic value to any organization. And there's going to be a lot of organizations that are going to look at you and they're going to snatch you up before you go off into that entrepreneurial space. And you have to be a fool to be an entrepreneur when somebody else is going to, Lockheed Martin out there is going to give you 6 figures to go work on F-35 or whatever. But let's just say you've got that burn. Let's just say nothing I'm going to tell you is going to stop you. All right, so there's some advantages. You have a lot of free advice coming to you from organizations like the ones in this building, from the federal government, state government, local government. As a small entrepreneur, the first thing you have to get used to is the idea that you're going to need help. In the military, that's not necessarily the case. You feel like as if you have to take the entire world on your shoulders, like you did for many years when I knew you over in the Navy. Well, as an entrepreneur, especially a small entrepreneur, take all the free stuff you can. Free is your friend. And if that means free
is your friend.
Free is your friend. Free advice, free connections, free networking events, take advantage. For some of us, like me, who are over 50% disabled, You get free health care. Think about that for a second. Your civilian competitors have to pay for that. You have a mechanism by which to leverage that as a price competitive point. Lower your price, see if you can't make that as a way to get things done. Get yourself known, get yourself in advancing your career as an entrepreneur. It's going to be a struggle. And it's not a direct correlation between one-to-one your military skill sets and your entrepreneur skill sets. It's just not going to be. For one, I'll just give you one small rule for entrepreneurs who are coming from the military. Look, when you're in the military, a lot of decisions are made for you by the very definition of the organization. Your healthcare is made for you. Your education is made for you. Where you're going to live is made for you. What you're going to dress is going to be made for you. A lot of things are decided for you. As an entrepreneur, as a civilian, you have to make all those decisions by yourself, or at best with some people, 2 or 3 other people. You're going to have to think about all those things. Don't get lost in that. Keep focused. Maybe the best thing about the military is its ability to focus people, so you keep focused on your prize. And then you let other people deal with all that minutia stuff that is like, well, do I get dressed every day? You know, Barack Obama only wore 2 suits. 2 suits is all you need, right? So don't go down to the Joseph A. Men's Outlet and buy yourself a closet full of clothes. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care. Right? So keep focused on your goal. You utilize as many free things as you possibly can. Leverage those free things to try to lower your fee structure or lower the prices, and then work those military connections. Have no shame. You have to really want this, and really wanting it means that you're going to have to, you're going to have to talk to some people maybe you didn't like that much, but you're going to have to talk to them. You're going to have to try to make those connections and leverage them.
Okay. All right. Mike and Daryl doing our fireside chat. We're going to take a few questions from the audience. Anybody got a question? Please, yes, Rocky.
Just to what you said just now, how do you handle decision fatigue now that you've gone from an environment in which you were given a framework that you had to follow regardless, and then you were given all this freedom?
Decision fatigue is real. I got lucky because I did my last 10 years as a reservist, so part of my life was already putting my toe into the civilian world, and while my other whole half of myself was in the military, right? But the easiest and best way to handle decision fatigue is to give yourself a timer for how long you have to make a decision, and then just go with the best one you've got. You can't submit yourself to paralysis by analysis. Sometimes you have a decision to make, you can't wait for a better thing to happen. Cut, move on. If that means that you have to actually give yourself, I'm gonna make this call in 5 days. I'm gonna make this call in 10 days. I'm gonna make this call right now. Give yourself a timer, make the decision, move on. It's not gonna be, you will never, as a small entrepreneur, always make the optimal decision, because you don't have optimal time. You have a very confined amount of time. So you have to make the best decision with the time you've got. Don't get lost in that minutia. Another approach may be, hey, I got lucky. Literally, I married an incredible person, and she has the ability to take all that minutia stuff and just say, baby, I got it. And before I know it, she's making calls. She's making decisions. And I can keep focused on the growth and the strategy of the company. So a lot of that stuff, I'll just give you a quick example of that.
Give it quick.
Very quick, because I know we have super quick.
Quick.
This guy knows I like those stories. All right, so big client, first big client. In order to prove that I'm a legitimate company, they need a website.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have a website. I'm looking over, I don't know how to make a website. The last time I made a website was in college for my rock and roll band then. Since nobody knows about that band, I guess it didn't work. So I look over and she's like, baby, I got it. And before I know it, 2 days later, there is a website. Is that the greatest website there ever was? No. It was a website made in haste, but it was a website. And what they needed was that. So, to answer your question, 2 approaches: give it to somebody else that you trust, or at least give you some time, a finite time to make the call.
And the other thing I will say is, hurry up and get through all the no's so you can get to the yeses.
Never take no from somebody who can't tell you yes.
Right.
Never take
No from someone who can't tell you yes. Right. Right. Any other question? Yes, go ahead, Dr. Lauren. Dr. Lauren is doing another doctorate, so you just told somebody to not do what doctor is doing doctor times again. So go ahead, Dr. Lauren.
I heard you say that you bought your father's business.
I did.
If you could do it over again, would you do the same thing or would you do a different type of business?
Since my father's business was essentially an IT related business, and I am doing cybersecurity and business consulting, it did fit kind of naturally, but it does have kind of a weird name, right? So it's Interactive Terminal Consultants Incorporated. What in God's name is an interactive terminal? Well, back when he started that term meant something. Now it's like, oh, right? So if I was to do it all over again, I would probably still do it that way. I wish he had chosen a more, fuzzy name that we could kind of make it mean whatever I need it to mean, right? Like modern corporations have like Altera. Well, what the heck is an Altera? Well, I would have probably done it something like that. But in exchange for having a wonky name, I get 30 years worth of business history. I'll take 30 years worth of business history and a goofball name every time over 1 year of business history and a name that I get to define.
That's good. That's good. Now, one last question. Yes, Chris.
What would be your advice to someone who just retired from a military position and then has now entered into their own business? They've
Okay.
started their own thing.
So let me ask a quick question. Do you have money?
They have some money, and his wife is still working.
Okay, then go for it. And I would say, and the reason I say that, it'd be go for it and if you didn't have money. Because I didn't have money when I started, right? So I ended up actually taking, for a while there, I had like 4 jobs, of which my company was one, right? I actually still only have 2 jobs because I teach, I actually am a professor at a university as well. But I would say that the best thing you could do coming out of the military, again, look for all those free things. Don't be afraid to leverage your network. The people inside know more than they think they know, and you know more people than you think you know. So start breaking out that Rolodex. If you really want to go into the world of defense contracting, you should give me a call because I can help. When you're starting out and you don't have a lot of money, then you have to really rely on your network. If you have a lot of money or you have some money, then you can spend some time building that network. But if you don't have a network and you don't have money, get a job.
Headed far as the east is to the west. Mike, man, I appreciate you taking the time to have this little fireside chat with us. And
My pleasure.
And
as always, Daryl.
let's give it up to Mike. Let's give it up. Let's give it up. Let's give it up. Let's give it up. Come on, we can do better than that. We can do better than that. I mean, nuggets and all that good stuff. Beep 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 beep. Oh, it's doing.
Came on stage and it's all
Okay, hold on. We'll do the music. But listen, guys.